All right. I do just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are recording this session, and this recorded session will be available on the conference platform 1 hour after the session ends. So thank you guys for joining us. This is the Reflective Supervision and Consultation, a racial equity intervention with Dr. Amita Parker. We want to hear from you in the chat, so please make sure that if you have questions or comments that you put those in the chat on the conference platform. We recommend using the conference platform chat feature because that chat will be recorded with the session, so please keep yourself muted unless otherwise asked by Dr. Parker. And I'm excited to introduce Dr. Amita Parker. She provides training and technical assistance for the Georgetown's National Center on Health, Behavioral Health and Safety. And her research, scholarship, and service focuses on advancing minority mental health and equity, particularly among families that are pregnant and parenting young children. Amita has worked for 15 years as a mental health consultant across a variety of settings, including home-based services, child care centers, school-based services, and health clinics. She's conducted research on Black maternal mental health in higher education, behavioral health services, and natural helping. She serves in leadership roles in local, state, and national venues focused on infant and early childhood, Black communities, and Black social workers. And without further ado, Dr. Parker, take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And I just have to say, I see some of my people out there in the Zoom world, and y'all just make my heart so happy to see you. I know y'all are sending me positive vibes, energy, and prayers, and I appreciate that. So thank everyone for joining me, and especially the folks who I know. So I'd like to have a conversation and share some things with you that have been really, I would say, heavy on my heart, but that is part of it. It has been heavy on my heart, really seeking to understand and figure out how do we do reflective supervision consultation better, and how do we advance racial equity. And so just in the spirit of considering these things simultaneously, I developed this presentation thinking about how I can move us towards understanding and then action that leads to change. Now, I want us to start with some quiet, traditional inform. If you know anything about reflective supervision consultation, right? There's always the quiet and the pause. And in this quiet and pause or minute, right? I'd like for you to just sit and examine this image, be curious and open to what is there in front of you, and see what you can see. Quiet yourself enough to be able to see what's in front of you. And I will give us 1 minute in time to pause and think about what we see and just observe it, be curious about it, and we'll come back. And I'm not going to be breathing on the mic. So I'm going to pause for a minute. All right, well done. I would love to invite, well, if we could, if anybody had any thoughts about what they see that they wanted to share. Can I do that or no? Okay. If you could put in the chat or speak aloud. What do you see?
The chat looks like it's disabled.
Oh, about that.
Yeah, but
I think they did disable this chat. Go ahead, please speak aloud.
Sure. What I was thinking initially was it looked very peaceful and serene, but then I was also wondering why this very tall, proud tree seemed to be alone and out there on its own, so majestic.
Mhm. Thank you. What about others? What do you see?
I
I see
see one.
Joanna. Sorry,
I see one more inviting than the other.
Thank you. And Joanna? Jana.
Jana.
Sorry. My
Well, I
apologies.
see the reflection is in more black and white kind of, and the other is in color. And the reflection, because it's more the two colors instead of many colors, there's more intensity in the differences in the black and white, so to speak. Then, so different things show up in the reflection than it does in the actual picture. So,
Okay. Trisha?
To me, it looks like the hidden depression or sadness that lies beneath the colorful surface for people who suffer from depression and anxiety. But that's what I see.
Nice reflection. Thank you, Trisha. I'll take one more.
I was thinking the top one was nice and warm and felt cozy, but the bottom one was really cool. And so it didn't reflect a whole lot of color or maybe thoughts or feelings.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate those who have spoken and shared what they've seen and how they were making sense. In reflective supervision consultation, there's not only the opportunity to pause, which I would say hardly ever happens. Let me just be clear, that I can quiet myself enough to focus on one thing, right? But then in hearing from others and making sense of their experiences, have learned something new and saw something different, right? And so it's an experience, right, to be known. And so I'm hopeful that through our time this afternoon, that you'll not only get an understanding of kind of like the feels of being in a reflective space or reflective supervision consultation, but also understand like the theory and the ideas behind the practice. So some of the topics we'll discuss, I don't know if you knew, I want to honor Shelley Mays, who many of you probably know has been doing reflective supervision consultation for many, many years in our state and is one of our leaders and one of our, I just honor all the work that she's done and committed to so many hours of investment in the work and the process and the capacity building and reflective supervision in our state. And I am actually here, not replacing her, but I can't be Shelley, I'm gonna be Amita. But I wanted to honor her and also give you an idea of what we'll discuss, which would probably be a little bit different than what she would have done. We're going to be talking about reflective supervision consultation, but I'm gonna really try to tailor our conversation and focus it in on racial equity and justice and how RSC can be an intervention. Now, let's start with the first question because I want to get a feel for who's in the room and how much experience you all have with reflective supervision consultation. And so there is a poll question if you wouldn't mind going to that poll question right now and voting is, I think, the language that's there for your level of experience. One being I'm completely green, which is open and with little experience with RSC. 2, basic knowledge. 3, solid background. And then we have the experts, which I know there are some in this space, which let's see if I can view the poll. Is that what I do?
I do believe, yes.
Okay. I don't know if I need to refresh my screen or what, because
Is everyone able to answer the poll on the Pathable page?
No.
no.
Yes,
no.
I was.
Irma, thank you for sharing. Let me ask you, I think something might have happened right before this session. Are we missing the chat feature and the polls feature on the Pathable page?
Yes, there's there's a chat.
Great. I was just kind of doing some back end here. The chat is working, which is great. We're trying to get the working as well. My apologies, Amita.
Oh, okay. I see.
I see the poll
Well,
option on my end, Morgan,
Oh, great.
and it has a little button that says vote. So it's not within the Zoom platform. If folks are thinking it's going to pop up, you have to go back to the platform under this session, and then there's a chat box, and then there are polls right next to the
Alright.
session within the Pathable platform.
now I see it moving. So I
Yes,
can't
they are.
tell how many people have participated, but it's changing.
Yay. And don't forget, if
And
you were on that page, do refresh that page to get the chat and the poll feature to show up for you again. Our apologies.
okay, perfect. Okay, this is working now. I just said yes to something, but I'm not sure that somebody else can figure that out later. Okay, so far as you all can see, we have a range of experience here, but with about half of you all having some solid background knowledge and experience, and then 25 and 27-ish, 25 and 25, a quarter of you all having a little bit of background and knowledge, and then we have some completely green or some folks who are open and with little experience, which is a nice crowd. And so I'm excited about this conversation, and those who know more, please share more, and those who are open and new, I'm hoping that you gain some information that you find helpful. The next question is, could reflective supervision consultation be a racial equity intervention? Also a polling question. And we'll see if that one is available to you. It's probably at the bottom, maybe. Yes, it's at the bottom. I see somebody may have already answered it. I should have moved it up, but what do you think? Can reflective supervision consultation be a racial equity intervention? On our list to do is to talk about what is racial equity, what is intervention, but assuming that you all have a general idea of that. Yes, all right. I wish I knew how many people had did it. That would be helpful.
It doesn't, I'm sorry, it doesn't give me the option again. So are you saying we need to update?
Yeah, refresh your browser and then
Okay.
see if it allows you to go back into my session and then go to the poll.
And you might have to scroll down to see it within the polls.
Well, it let me answer the previous question, but then.
Yeah, it's down at the bottom. So you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's like the last one that's available. And so far, I have 68% of you that think, yes, it could be, and 32, maybe. All right. Well, that's my task, to convince you all by the end of our time today. Or if you're not convinced, let's figure out, how to have a conversation about this, because I would love to learn more and understand more of the basis on which people have made their decisions. So this is helpful in a learning process for me too. All right, let's go back. And are you seeing my screen again? Perfect. So this pausing, going back and forth, geez, it's like really a mess. I don't know what you all are able to see once the screen pauses, but I'd love to hear what you all think reflective supervision consultation is, based on your own understanding and experiences. And there is, I think, a word cloud for this available on the platform. I'll see if I can.
It is there, Dr. Parker, if people want to start
Yes.
what they're thinking about in that same stream where we were putting our poll answers.
All right. I think I was able to make it bigger if I didn't mess up something. It's moving. Okay, so people think reflective supervision consultation is about, I'm guessing, holding families. It's about the work. I see supervisor and employees and supporting, intentionality or intentionally, regularly talking, reflecting on things like the workplace, reflecting on families. This really is viewing weird. I don't know how y'all feel, but there's many different ways of thinking about and describing reflective supervision consultation. And there's there's a body of literature that talks about what are some of the factors or the elements of reflective supervision consultation and what makes reflective supervision consultation. I want to share these ideas here just to give you a feel for some of like the elements that folks are considering really important in reflective supervision consultation. And that is that it is a trusted relationship between a supervisor and a practitioner, or leader and supervisor, or there's different types of relationships or roles. Recently, I've been doing a lot more work with systems leaders around reflective supervision consultation and providing reflective spaces for them too to be a part of this dynamic process. And so I think about and I want to lift up the creating of different types of relationships in the work, being consistent and predictable or regularity. Those are one of the elements that's really important in effective reflective supervision consultation. There's this conversation, which was already mentioned there, with conversation about the baby, conversation about families, conversations about the work, conversations about us. These conversations are limitless, if you will. But what's most important is that all parties are committed to being present and doing the work. And then there's this collaborative and like nurturing, supportive environment that ensues in that space. Additionally, one of the other things that I think is really critical and kind of unique is that it is an experience where we are asked to tune into our emotions and also process them. And that then makes some connections and some integration of heart and mind, if you will, that really, for me, in my own experience, helped rewire me in so many ways in the way that I am processing my work. The parallel processes is really essential. And then that holding space is another aspect that's critical that I want to elevate. Now, racial equity and racial justice, folks are throwing around these terms as if it's like, I don't know, nothing. And I don't like that so much. When I talk about racial equity, I'm really talking about advancing the idea that we can get to a place where my race, for example, no longer predicted how I would do, how long I would live, what things I can accomplish, where I could live, how successful I could be, right? And I'm advancing racial equity because of the fact that there are policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that do the opposite, right? They do create inequities. They do make it to where we all don't have a level playing field. And it makes it to where our race in many ways determines how we'll do. And that's the justice piece. That's where justice comes in, because it's unfair that systemically people of different racial groups are experiencing inequitable conditions. And so that's why I'm really trying to lift up the importance of, and then the fact that each one of us have a role in creating, advancing, maintaining equitable opportunities and closing the gaps in the disparities. Like, we all have to be a part of that. It won't happen otherwise. And be really deliberate about, like, I say, standing up or speaking out or doing whatever is necessary to see this through. Now, I know that this is complicated, right? Like, I really like this image because to me, it's like, oh, it seems so simple, right? Treat people respectfully. Like, you see a racist policy, call it out and make sure it gets changed. Okay. You see that folks are systemically being treated differently, or folks don't have access to what they need, right? Just change it, right? But that's not how it works. It's actually really complicated. And that's why I think that we need an intervention. We really need to be intentional about, I hate the way that showed up. Changing the difficult situation to improve things from getting worse. Because I didn't tell y'all about it, but like, I was a home visitor, right? Like, I was a home visitor with in a program that was trying to figure out how to create like a primary care model in Head Start, where like the home visitor would also be the mental health consultant. And so it'd be a 2-for-1, right? The families with higher needs would get both in one, right? So I did that. So I learned all the things about being a home visitor and being an educator. And also, at the same time, I had my clinical background and training knowledge that I brought into this space. And I was fortunate that I was able to be with families as they interacted with so many different systems. I mean, like, you talking about like school systems, and then healthcare, going to well child checks, and then prenatal visits, right? Postpartum, like following up and connecting people around that. But I was there. And then I wasn't just there with one family, I was there with multiple families. And I'm from Kansas City. And so the families that I served in my programs, being Spanish speaking and Black, and also just this, because of the nature of the area, like I was seeing mostly Black and brown families. And I kept seeing people experiencing the same types of issues, right? Like, oh, this provider is harsh, they're cold, they're uncaring. Folks come in and talking about how they feel judged in those spaces, can't get appointments, like just experiencing lots of issues as they navigate resources. And I wanted to, those things bothered me. They actually propelled me into getting my doctorate, because I wanted to figure out how to change all of that. I witnessed a lot of things that were unjust, and I was uncertain about like what was my specific role. Like, I'm just one home visitor, right? I'm just one therapist interacting with families. And I now see that there are many things that I could have done, and there are many things that I can still do, but I didn't really have a place to process that. So I think that we need to like start incorporating or considering some of the frameworks that are available related to racial equity and justice, if we really want to, as a field, early childhood serving systems, right, really be involved in an intentional way, and like really advancing and addressing some of the inequities and the issues that are there. And so one way that we can kind of move towards that end is to think about how we can advance racial equity and justice individually and collectively. And that's why I think like reflective supervision consultation could be a potential space for this work. Like, yeah, we have to do our own individual work, but like reflective supervision consultation, I'll share that with you in the next few minutes, but it does naturally already have embedded in it the importance of building awareness of ourselves and others, right? The importance of thinking about our past and how that's incorporated or influencing our present, the importance of becoming attuned with our emotional experience and how that is impacting the work that we're doing and impacting how we interact with our clients, right? The piece around understanding like the context, like what's happening in the world, right? That's influencing the families, but also influencing us. That's already embedded in this process. And then, you know, when I think about like, where is the place that's already built that we can start practicing some of this language, right? Many of us don't know how to talk about racism. In fact, so many people are comfortable about even like talking about race, period, right? Do I say Black family, African-American mom? I don't know where to say, right? Like some of us already have a lot of discomfort around terminology, right? It's privilege and power and, you know, just there's so many words, right, and concepts that we need to be making sense of and starting to understand and use, right? And reflective supervision consultation could be a place where you can do some practice there. And so awareness is really huge in racial equity and justice work. And I think that we need to be considering like not only like the ways in which we think about becoming more self-aware, but also the ways in which we deepen our capacity to be like critically self-reflective, like thinking about ourselves and our questioning or thinking about, right, our upbringings and our educational experiences, right? Like how we were socialized in our primary school days, and in many of you all have, you know, undergraduate and graduate degrees, right? Like all within every discipline, there's like this these cannons, if you will, of knowledge and information that is like fed to you in those spaces. And it's coming out right now. It has been over the last few years that a lot of bias is baked into much of what we learned about how to do our work, right? And so like, where's a space where we can begin to like unlearn, ask questions, do different, right? Where can we explore internalized racism as a person of color or oppression and experiences with that, experiences with like racial abuse, or maybe, you know, now since more folks are talking about, I call it racist abuse intentionally, but folks are more comfortable with the word microaggression. So some of us continue to experience those things, and some of us are being called out or called in because we have been exhibiting those types of behaviors. And we need to be able to understand that process, right? And how that works, and then also think through what to do different to make this field a better place to work, but also like enhance the way that we interact with our clients and our families so that we can provide quality culturally attuned services. And so the action and accountability are pieces that, you know, I won't talk a lot about today, but this is a part of the work. Like, what do you do now that you know more and you understand more, right? Like you have to make a decision, like an intentional decision to do something different and continue building skills. And then accountability is the last piece that I can't help but overemphasize, because accountability is necessary for us individually and also collectively. And I feel like in many ways in reflective supervision consultation, or my experiences with it, there's space for us to talk about what we will do next, right? And then there's that coming back. How did that go? And what other supports do you need? And how can we be helpful? So accountability is kind of a part of the reflective process. But additionally, I think that I like this framing, right? These words are catchy. Awareness, analysis, action, accountability, they're memorable. If you're doing racial equity and justice work, these are memorable, right? Like you can think about what am I doing across all these dimensions to move me towards whatever is your end goal. And also, I hope that you can see the connections to, or you're beginning to see the connections and the ways in which this kind of aligns with how reflective supervision consultation can be. Now, the diversity informed tenants, I want to put them here because self-awareness is so much been a part of what we're promoting, like becoming more aware so that we can deliver better services. Like I'm sure y'all have heard enough about that, right? But just becoming aware of these isms, right, and the way they operate, and becoming more aware of how oppression, meaning like how folks are exploited and excluded and harmed and made to feel less than or othered. Just becoming aware of that isn't enough. It doesn't make it any easier. And I think that there are challenges even in the process of trying to become self-aware, especially when you're extremely busy. Like, where are you about to do that at? Where are you about to spend time in deep reflection on these things? Like, do you have space carved out? Does your organization support quiet pauses, reflection? I don't know. I would argue that there are some challenges in the process of advancing racial equity. And I want to give you some space to tell me what some of those challenges are, because I think understanding some of the challenges and also some of the supports that are available can help us understand like the bridge that might be there. So we'll go back to our handy dandy platform and see what you
Hey,
all
Dr.
say.
Parker, while
Yes,
while we're navigating and having a little bit of a switch here, Jonna Stanford has her hand raised. I believe she had a question for a while. Jonna, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, I noticed that. I do think that you have to put your hand down after you have responded. Otherwise, they'll just stay just chilling there. So
Okay, sorry, I really didn't need to have it raised. I'll change
No worries.
So what are some challenges in the work? All right. Oh, critical race theory. Let's talk. So some people confuse racial equity and critical race theory, right? There's a lack of knowledge in the field. There's some unopenness to change. And there's this idea that folks are not biased, right? We all have biases. I just have to say that. We all, every single one. That's you, and your mom and your dad and everybody else. We all have biases, period. Yeah. So there's a lot of work for all of us to do. Let's see, what else? Challenges in advancing racial equity. Well, I also want to say, like, everybody hasn't bought into the fact that we need to be advancing racial equity. Let's just say that. And that's okay too, because there are costs associated with advancing racial equity. Because remember, if you go back to what I started with, there are some groups that are benefiting from these inequitable systems. We got to acknowledge that. Okay, are y'all watching this? Y'all seeing this too? Let's just see what we see here. Back again with resistance to change, and that is it a lack of knowledge, or oh, somebody said something good. It was like will for ignorance or something like that. That really stood with me. Sometimes people just don't want to. They just don't want to. They don't want to do it. White privilege gets in the way. Okay, so this other one about getting people to engage without already being discussion. I think I maybe need clarity. I may be mixing something up in that one, but I do think that if I'm understanding is to get people engaged is a challenge. And sometimes you do and do not want to go into a discussion. Like, that's a choice. This is helpful. So the systems have been built. Isn't that overwhelming sometimes? It's like, I didn't build this system. Actually, like, I didn't, right? So it's kind of overwhelming sometimes to think about how like ingrained and rooted it is and like how much work will really be required. Fear of change is a challenge, right? Sympathy versus empathy, right? I'm so sorry that happened to you versus really trying to understand the shoes from which another person stands, right? We need a system that reflects the makeup of our community. Let's not talk about diversity and workforce issues today. No, I'm just playing. We can talk about it because it's important, right? We need, at what point will early childhood serving systems reflect the people that are served, right? And maybe not just that, even like, at what point will the leadership reflect the community served? I don't know if we're ready to have that conversation, but that is a challenge, most definitely. Creating a mission statement that is inclusive. Oh, and everybody hasn't participated. So like, what is like real, true inclusion and who is at the table and participating, right? This is awesome. These keep coming. Wanting to be a support, but not knowing exactly how to do it, right? That's good. Okay. This is helpful, y'all. I hope that we can save these because I would love to come back to them and, you know, share them maybe with you all as you think about them, because I'm sure, you know, sometimes it's validating to know that you're not the only one who has a certain challenge, right? Let's go to the next question, which is about what types of supports are available to you related to advancing equity, because it's not all problems, right? Not all challenges. There are some supports that are out there that some people have been able to access and and use in their work. And I'm curious about that. Excuse me, I think I just burped on the thing. Like, sorry. Forgive me. I'm a really probably too transparent of a person. Even in the Zoom platform, I want to make sure I'm using all my manners. All right, so we got some supports being down here, or lack of supports, shall I say. All right, so I see that some folks have mentioned that the conference itself is a part of a support for advancing racial equity. Structure already in place to discuss difficult issues. So some organizations or programs probably already have that built into their, monthly, weekly agendas. Some people may already be in reflective supervision consultation. Some are unaware of any intentional supports, right? So school district has a DEIA team. Nice. Are y'all seeing these? So a support within themselves and each other, right? Co-workers they can relate to. Oh, wait a minute, somebody's calling me out. After you gave a training. All right, shout out to our Project Eagle people. How y'all doing? There is now a group, right, to have some conversations. I'm so excited to hear that. Thank you for sharing. I truly appreciate it. So with our Spanish speaking families, resources are seeming to grow, as are the bilingual folks. That's awesome. Task forces I see to address racial equity and inclusion. Oh, wow. I see some folks having people in positions to offer support, but they not being as accessible. All right, thank y'all. This is helpful, right? Like you're seeing there's a range of experiences, right? A range of challenges and a range of supports related to racial equity. And I think that's really helpful information. You know, when I talk to folks, I hear people talking about how supervision is a support, and folks don't think about, which that's a privilege, right? The fact that in supervision there are power dynamics, and then also there's some interracial mismatch kinds of things that have been documented in the literature, and also I know them in practice, being a Black mental health specialist and a home visitor. And I never had a supervisor of color, if I'm remembering correctly. Just running back through my Rolodex, not one. And what does that mean, right? Like, well, I could tell you that I wasn't always really my real authentic self in those spaces, in those encounters. I can tell you that I was always aware of and weighing the options of what I would say and how I would say it and what were the consequences of that. There's not enough people thinking about personality, conflict, and communication style differences in supervision, or just those cultural dynamics too, and ways of relating. And that's why, like, I want to talk for just a brief moment about some of the different types of supervision, because I love when people say, well, in supervision, they can talk about those things, right? What kind of supervision are we talking about, right? Administrative, clinical, or reflective? Of course, my purpose here is kind of elevate reflective supervision consultation, and also if it's affordable for that reflective supervision consultant to be outside of the agency, or at least to not have decision-making authority over those individuals in that space, if possible, but we'll get there. So administrative supervision, right, is what we all think of, I think, when we think about supervision, right? It's the person who is overseeing your work, how you do your work, and if it's done correctly, right? How much of a support is administrative supervisor or typical management in processing some of the pieces that have been shared here thus far related to racial equity and justice, or related to how we're struggling with different aspects of our work and that align with maybe us holding different identities than those we're working with, or experiencing issues amongst coworkers, or experiencing, I don't know, interracial mismatch, and trying to make sense of that. I don't know. Well, clinical supervision is another type of supervision that folks who are, have advanced degrees usually are in clinical supervision to pursue their next licensure or whatnot. And nobody calls me except for when I'm doing something, y'all. I just want to say that. Now I have to get my thoughts back on track. But clinical supervision is really case focused and originates from the medical model, and it's really focused on technical skills. And the thing is that with clinical supervision and administrative too, if we're really honest, like, there's not a lot of training or professional development that happens around like supervision. There's a study that talks about how in social work, which is my profession, folks go into higher level positions just based on experience, like how long you stay in the job, like can move you up quicker, right? And then when you think about clinical supervision, it's like this natural progression, like somebody supervises you, then you pay it forward, you're supervising somebody, but you don't necessarily learn how to do it well. And there's some research out there that's actually really scary that talks about how, you know, people are not being equipped because of supervision being like a make or break thing where they're not getting what they need. The supervisors are reporting struggles and talking about sensitive topics, and the supervisees are reporting harm. They're reporting that they are beyond struggling, and burnout and stresses are high through those relationships. And I think that we can't assume that in clinical supervision, just because a person is clinically trained, that they're a good supervisor. So time and structure, and I still go back to like personality, communication, conflict style, all those things are really important, because if there's a mismatch, it can be a really challenging situation, and definitely a place where a person who is wanting to explore some of their more personal, or like, I say vulnerabilities, but that's a stronger word than I think I want to mention at this very point. But just even to be exploring those kinds of things, it just doesn't seem like that's the space for it. Now, reflective supervision consultation, I got to be clear with y'all. Like reflective supervision consultation and its origins, and even how it's been, the knowledge base, the promotion of it has not necessarily been, it wasn't created to be a racial equity intervention. It wasn't created to be a space where folks talk about racism or oppression or their racial identities. It actually was quite colorblind until maybe the last 5-ish years ago, right? They've done a huge overhaul and revamp, and I've been privileged to be at the table to be able to see the folks really try to diversify the people who are who are influencing what is effective reflective supervision consultation and how do you do it, and really trying to build capacity around racial equity and justice in our field. The relationship-based piece has always been there. It's always been central. The use of self has always been central, but it was just really colorblind, like, and a really white space. Let me just say that, where most of reflective supervisors have been white, women, middle class. So that's the context, right? It's changing. And still, there's been an emphasis on like exploring the emotional experience, thinking about like the interplay amongst people. And I feel really grateful that now there are more explicit conversations around race, racism, oppression, the experiences that are tied to our racial identities and histories. And it really is becoming a space where folks of different backgrounds have the ability, should they feel safe enough, to explore those things. I want to give y'all a little scenario, just breaking things up a little bit. Keep y'all guessing. It's afternoon. In this scenario, I want you to think about what type of supervision might be helpful. Here it is. A white cisgender woman, home visitor. She's on your team. Let's say that you are the supervisor. She calls you and tells you that she's working with a Black family, and they told her that they do not trust her or want to work with the other white people in the program. And that's because of past experiences. And then the home visitor tells you that she told the mother that she's the only person that can serve them, and so they'll have to deal with her. Now, the home visitor was very bothered by the situation and left and called you her supervisor. What would you do? but maybe more so than what would you do? What type of supervision do you think would be helpful in this situation? Now, I didn't put a polling question for this, so you're gonna have to like answer in the chat maybe. If the chat's working now, I don't know. I'm trying to keep up with where we are.
Dr. Parker, I think the chats are working both on Zoom and on the Pathable platform. And again, anything on the Pathable platform will be recorded, including the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so I see RSC. Yes, reflective supervision, reflective. I would ask her why she told the family she was the only one. Yeah, far too strict, right? You have to deal with me. Reflective supervision. Yeah, so you would ask questions, right? Which could be a part of administrative, right? Like one, administrative management wise, like, are you truly the only person that can serve this Black family? If you are, what does that mean, right? Is there not one Black home visitor? That's a problem, right? That's information though that I think is helpful. So I like what Virginia said, that all of them might be helpful, administrative or management, because like, why are you saying this to people? And do you really know that's the answer? Did that come from kind of a reactive place? Clinical, how might it be to be working with this family? Like, how now might this person assess this mother or this person she interacted with? I would think that there may be some pieces of, there might be some things there that are kind of impacting her thoughts and feelings about them. Yeah, Autumn, like bringing out how that made her feel. What was that like, exploring it? And even like the choice of like, okay, well, do you want to work with this family or not? And if you do work with them, what does that mean? And how might you do that? Yeah. Thank you all. I think that, the point I'm trying to make is not rather, this home visitor was right or wrong, but more so than that, to think about what administrative or management type of supervision might contribute to this situation, what clinical supervision might contribute, which clinical supervision typically tries to shy away from, kind of going into those like real personal pieces of ourselves and kind of really keep it focused on the work, keep it focused on our plan. And then reflective supervision, on the other hand, might offer a space to kind of consider what are some of the assumptions, the thoughts and feelings that are driving her words and her actions, and then, how she might move forward otherwise. The thing is that there's a lot of like misconceptions about reflective supervision consultation that make it to where folks who are engaging with it may not be taking full advantage of it. And then folks who don't know the truth may choose or shy away from or avoid reflective supervision consultation. And I want to talk about a few of those real quick. One is that just listening doesn't help, or that listening doesn't result in an action. And I always say that listening does actually really do a lot. It provides an opportunity for us to pause and think about our concerns and solutions. And honestly, I used to say this back in the day when I would be working with folks and they would be like, wow, Mita, that was so helpful. And I'm thinking to myself, like, the only thing I did was listen and reflect back to you. I was like a mirror, essentially. And so I didn't really do much here besides be that mirror and be that holding space. But there's so much power in that, like allowing people the space to be able to reflect aloud, and then they can see and hear themselves differently. Additionally, that process of reflecting, like listening, can build a person's reflective capacity because they're thinking about what they're hearing and experiencing. They're thinking about what other people are thinking or experiencing, and it's just this dynamic process that builds our understanding and builds our competence. It builds our capacity to communicate. It also leads to quality. Just being able to really truly be present and listen. And when I think, about everything that's happened over the last couple of years, I go back to thinking about, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and how I felt when I heard about and witnessed their stories. And then like the insurgents at the Capitol, how I felt in those moments. I think about what it would be like to just have a space either to reflect or have a space to really just listen. I think that listening is an experience to be known. It really is. We can grow and learn so much if we can do it and do it well. Some people say reflective supervision is too much like therapy. And what's funny is like the people who say that have never been in therapy. So to me, that's hilarious. But I get it though, because it's like, oh, I don't want to be on full stage. And the thing is that reflective supervision does invite you can pass you to explore your thoughts and feelings. And it's generally within the context of the work, right? Or some connection to the work. And there is not this false assumption that we're not we're like blank slates, and we're coming into this work without anything, and we're not influenced by or impacted by our work or our personal lives. So it comes from the frame of like, yeah, you are a part of the work. And so then exploring how you're thinking and feeling is also a part of the work. And so it does help us kind of like frame some of our personal experiences in the context of the work. But it's not therapy. This other thought that like experienced staff don't need it. I feel like I need reflective supervision more now than I did 15 years ago. But I think I needed it 15 years ago too. Absolutely. I was in it 15 years ago, but I think I've needed it throughout the entire time. And so the fact that folks don't think that you need it appalls me, because our work is ever changing. The level of difficulty, right, in the work shifts. I am shifting, you are shifting, we are shifting, our skills are developing and shifting along with the needs. And so my point, reflective supervision consultation is for you. And you and you and you. Okay. Now, home visiting is complicated too, right? I think about how, what might it be like to be in you all's shoes and be thinking about advancing racial equity in the context of home visiting? And it's just so messy. Like there's so many different things that are pulling from you and your energy and your capacity to be present and to be intentional about changing these really difficult situations on this individual, family, community level, and then even thinking about how do you change these systems that folks are interacting with. It's complicated. But I would say that, we need an intervention that does help us sit with what is equitable and how does that look, and how am I or am I not helping to pursue that? What is quality and what is it not? And how am I standing up, speaking out, or doing something to help pursue quality for everybody, especially Black, Indigenous, and persons of color, other folks who are historically marginalized. What's culturally attuned, and how do you do that? Well, the work that you all have been doing and then do, I think because it is focused on developing the capacity of young children and relationships, understanding the environment in which they live, the environment that families are raising their kids in, and then the fact that you're also, sorry, my computer's about to die, working with parents and helping parents to understand parenting, helping parents to understand themselves and get the things that they need so that then they could be their child's first parent, teacher, that kind of thing. It's complex. There's a lot of things that are embedded in this practice that you all are in. You're not just going to families' homes or interacting with families in a virtual context just for fun. You know what I mean? Like, you are there because you have some really specific goals to support young children, pregnant women, and their families. But the thing is that, you know, we're all humans. And so we bring with us a lot. We bring with us our past harms, past hurts. Let's talk about stress in a pandemic that we remain in. And I literally, before we just got on this call, got a message that somebody I was at a park with this weekend just found out they were positive for COVID. Like, talk about stress, right? Like, I mentioned that too because it's just this constant thing. Like how can I focus on the conversation with you all in the midst of thinking about all these things, my unvaccinated children around a COVID positive person, and I'm trying to focus on this conversation, but it's, you know, and thinking about racial equity and the fact that Black people are dying, and Native people are dying at higher rates than others. I'm bringing this stress with me. And even this conversation that we're having right now, and I'm trying to do my best to like manage my emotions. I'm trying to use my skills. I really am. But the point that I'm making is that we're bringing ourselves, our full selves into our work. And it doesn't matter if you are actually in the field going to families' homes, or you're the person that's in the office that is, you know, designating cases, or you're the person who's providing supervision, or you're the person who's funding Head Start, or whatever role that you play, you are bringing your full self into the work. And we're carrying all this with us as we also consider and bring with us thoughts and feelings about how to parent right, how to discipline children, how to relate to others and have relationships, how to do work in parenting and balance that, and other things, right? There's so much of our personal experiences, values, beliefs, biases, socialization experiences that we are bringing into our work. And I just wanted more than anything to drop in this space that the work is personal and professional. So we need a space. We need time. We need to first acknowledge that this work is as much personal as it is professional. You think about what drew you to this type of work. You could be an accountant. You could be a firefighter. Working with children and families in communities. And there's a reason for that. And I think that it's really important for us to recognize how all these pieces and all these things do bring, we bring them into our work, and what then challenges or what strengths, what ways that supports our growth and learning and development, and the extent to which we can provide quality services. Now, I told you already that we all have biases, and I'm kind of trying to make a bridge here to thinking about the fact that if in healthcare, in child welfare, in policing, in government, then in early childhood, there's bias. And that bias has been a part of the racist, oppressive systems in which we live. And I want us more than anything to explore or entertain the idea that it could be us who are thinking and acting in ways that are biased in our practice, but we're not aware of it. And what does that mean? And I always say that, you know, because racism is systemic and structural, we should expect that it's everywhere. And the point that we expect it's everywhere, we'll be able to tune in and be able to see it when it is present and how it is working. And then that would make us a step closer to actually changing or dismantling. Everybody want to talk about dismantling systems of racism and oppression, and they don't even know what it looked like, really. And so I think that we have to first start with seeing it and how it works, and then we can really address it. But anti-Black racism has been noted across time and space, and like I said, across all kinds of systems. And Patricia Devine, in her work, she really elevates that when a person is actually stressed, they're more likely to operate within that bias, like categorizing folks in stereotypical ways. And so I think that because, I'm a researcher, right? So in research, but also in practice, we know that folks are stressed. And so then it could be us, could be any one of us operating in these ways. And since there's that research out of Gilliam's camp and some other scholars that is really looking at how teachers or early childhood educators are interacting with and responding to what we call challenging behaviors. And because we know that big Black boys are more likely to experience that extra negative attention, those harsher consequences, that kind of thing, that then place them at risk for preschool expulsion, wouldn't it also behoove us to consider how are we interacting with big Black daddies or Black moms or Native moms or Asian moms or Latino moms or Latina moms? How are we interacting with Black, Indigenous, and persons of color? How are we interacting with the adults, the kids? I don't know. I think that the point I really want to make is that we live in a society that really is forcing us to have these stereotypes. It's forcing us to think and behave in biased ways. And we have to take back our power and decide that we don't want to think and be and operate in these ways. I want to share with you a study that I really feel like is really fascinating. These researchers looked at different books and texts and literature that were exposed through K through 12 education. And what they found was that there are these word pairings that are consistently found across all kinds of different literature that we're exposed to. And these are the word pairings. And it's with Black, the word Black is paired with poor, paired with violent, paired with religious, lazy, cheerful, and dangerous. So I remember folks used to joke about subliminal messages. These are the subliminal messages that have been fed to us as we do our work in school or read books, magazines, or whatever. Additionally, the words paired with white are wealthy, progressive, conventional, stubborn, successful, and educated. And I pause right now because I literally just was talking about a white person. I was talking about how, they're kind of progressive. And now I'm pausing with that because I'm like, God dang it. Why did I want to use that word with that person? well, this is a step towards addressing those patterns, right? Becoming more aware of it. And I think that I'm sharing with you because becoming more aware of these pairings for me has made me check myself when I'm interacting with like my son who is Black and he's struggling with his work. And my first thought is he's being lazy. Like, is he really being lazy? Or is there something else happening, right? I think this is the work that we're doing, right? Like where we have to sit and think and learn and have conversation with others to build those connections. And this is why we need a racial equity intervention. This is why we need, something like reflective supervision, consultation that can help us increase our awareness, increase our capacity to analyze power dynamics and systems of oppression, and lead us towards taking action intentionally to address these things. And then like that where there's built-in accountability. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things within reflective supervision that I feel like is really helpful towards this end, like the analysis, action, accountability part. Well, reflective supervision, these are like the components that are involved in effective reflective supervision consultation. Because some of y'all may have not been privileged to have and receive or experience quality reflective supervision. And I acknowledge that. Some of you are in roles where you are a decision maker, and I appreciate that because you need to listen. That these are some of the things that need to be a part of your reflective supervision consultation program, and that when there is a need for reflection, the relationship piece is important. Regularity. I see folks cutting corners all the time. Reflective supervision consultation can't really be an effective racial equity intervention if it's going to be that. If you only having it every now and again, or when there's a problem. Regular, trusted space, collaborative relationships, where there's reflection, like all of these pieces are necessary. And then through this process, folks are comfortable or more comfortable talking about their thoughts and feelings and reactions. You can get at, some of the learning that needs to happen because it's a safer environment. Let's think about this. I'm sure all of you all know about the brain basics. Have you been exposed to conscious discipline? And some of the other folks that talk about the brain, right? The brain is pattern seeking, right? It's seeking safety. And the brain also, when you think about it, like connections on the outside with other people, bridge connections on the inside. I'm sure that one of y'all can like spit all of these, right? Like you can tell me about all of these, right? I'm trying to create here yes, Autumn, thank you. I know I wasn't tripping. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But this is what happens in the process of having a space where you can reflect in relationship with others in a regular and safer space. And then this is the kind of environment where folks can, explore their strengths and then areas of growth, even around and related to their racial identities or even experiencing racial harm or those kinds of things. But this is helpful. Another part about reflective supervision consultation that I think is really helpful in the process is getting us to move from that really like simple single loop learning process and communication process to doing the double loop. Because it's not just the fact that typically we think, okay, this is what I know, this is what I did, this is the outcome, period, right? But that's not it, right? Because what you did occurred because of something you were thinking or feeling or experiencing either right now or maybe in the past. And so that part of reflective supervision that pushes us to think about why. But why did you say that then? Like, what made you feel that way? Where does that come from for you? Like that's a deeper type of reflection that can really increase our awareness of ourselves, but also our analysis, in that we gain a deeper understanding of why we do what we do. And in the context of this process, reflective supervision really creates an environment of acceptance, right? Not judging, because we all have different experiences, and like the judgment is what stops people's process a lot of times. Like if they feel judged, then next thing you know, tears, guilt, shame, conversation's over. And so I think that like because this process invites like acceptance, and there's this push for being curious and wondering, it really does move us towards going deeper in our own learning and growth process. The parallel process is another piece that's really helpful in reflective supervision consultation. And this process is really emphasized, and it makes us think about and attend to all relationships in the process. And I'll show you here in a second. So it's not just, it's the interactions with, you know, the home visitor, supervisor, their supervisor, the home visitor, and the parents they're interacting with, the home visitor, and the baby or the young children that are in that space, and really thinking about all the interplays, all those interactions, and they're like minute. So there's millions of interactions that are happening, like a eye gaze or a touch or words or whatever. There's millions of things happening at any given time. And no, you don't attend to all of them, but reflective supervision consultation does at least bring to our awareness the need to be able to think about the ways that all of these parts play a role. Now, there was a time, and I see where we are in the time, and I want to give y'all time to ask me questions. So I'm going to kind of like move through this a little bit, but we used to just kind of like stop this process at the reflective supervisor consultant, in that the reflective supervisor is holding the home visitor, and then the home visitor then can hold the parent, and then the parent then can hold, nurture, think about, consider the baby, right? Well, what we found is that the supervisors needed to be held too, because a lot of them were trying to just figure it out. And you can't experience what you haven't experienced. You can't give somebody else what you haven't experienced. And so the process kind of expanded. And so that's why I'm saying that, like, I truly am promoting the need for everybody to be a part of reflective spaces if possible, because it really helps enlighten you into your role, but also helps you gain a better perspective on others and what others are thinking and feeling and possibly needing. There's a lot of research on reflective supervision consultation, and the findings are really promising. It's showing that it helps to reduce suspensions and preschool expulsions. And I'll show you how in just a quick second. It helps with behavior skills, or managing behaviors in children, developing social skills. It helps with improving interactions with like the home visitor or teacher and families or children. It helps to address burnout. It also helps with perspective taking, which I think is influencing those other outcomes. But then in systems, it's leading to better referral linkages and helping people get connected if they need to. This is the process of like how it kind of works. And I'll show you briefly, right, that like in the consultation experience, there's, when I said collaborative, right, relationship and a trusted relationship, that part is really key. In that collaborative environment where you can ask questions, you can think about race and identity, you can explore the context, all those things, a person's reflective capacity is increased, and also their perspective is changed. Therefore, it can reduce the number of referrals, reduce inequitable expulsions, just because people have a greater awareness of what biases may be at play, and they've taken strategies to address those. So I think it's really cool. These are some of my colleagues in Georgetown that are have recently been doing a lot more publishing on this. But I think that it's promising. I think it's helpful. Now, here's the thing, that now we're at the place, hold on, somebody's at my house, and I think it's, hold on, let me check. Sorry, it's my kid. I was not expecting nobody, but yeah. Anyway, so we're at a place now where we know that it's not as simple, like we want to advance racial equity in our work and we just do it, right? And it's going to be like straight, clear path. But there's going to be challenges along the way. And I would say that it might be helpful to have something like a reflective supervision consultation in as we're beginning to develop awareness, as we're trying to figure things out, how to talk about these things, how to do this work. It might be helpful once a person does encounter a challenge of some sort, sees a racist policy that needs to be changed or something that needs to be done different. It might be helpful as like successes are celebrated, like helping somebody address an issue with their medical provider, or maybe when it gets stressful and there's a lot of challenges, like it might be nice to have a place to process things. So I would say that along our journey and the challenges that are there, that regular reflection in a trusted collaborative space, is that all of them? That might be useful. So based on what you think, what you now know, could it be? You all decide, and then I'm willing to take any questions. You can take a polling question again. I think that last one. Sorry. Let's see. Can we do it again or no? We can only do it one time.
I think people can, and they have changed their answers, it looks like, to that last question, Dr. Parker. The number of maybes went down and the number of yeses went up.
All right. It's moving. And are there any questions I can take? I talked about a lot in a short time. I'm sorry, y'all. I always think like, oh, I want to have more time.
Dr. Parker, Autumn has a question. She wonders if you have any resources that we could all explore regarding reflective supervision.
What do you mean by resources? Like where you can get a reflective supervisor, or what reflective supervision is? What part?
Autumn, I'll let you unmute and answer that.
What it is and how we can kind of implement it in what we're currently doing, like, kind of webinar trainings. That's what I was kind of thinking.
Okay. Well, I would say that like the Kansas Association for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health, I know that there is a training right now in place focused on building capacity around reflective supervision consultation. And I don't know if that's started yet, but I know that they did a training in August. I think they were starting another one September, October, somewhere around there. So I would start with Kansas Association for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health. It's www.kaimh.org, I believe. There is a section on reflective supervision consultation there. Additionally, the Alliance for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health does have a lot of resources on reflective supervision consultation. Last place I will mention, another website, my colleagues in Georgetown, and there's a Center for Excellence in Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. And then they have some resources there on reflective supervision consultation, they tend to speak to it from the lens of like the mental health consultant providing reflective supervision consultation, but I do still think there are some nice webinars and also information that would be useful.
I also just want to add that KDHE is launching a learning management system that will be live after October 1st. And we do have reflective supervision modules in there. That is a 100% free resource. That is not even, it's open to more than even KDHE funded. It's literally open to everyone. We just haven't launched it yet. So we will put out messaging when that learning management system launches, and it's going to have many trainings, including some reflective supervision trainings as well with Shelley Mays.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And Kim, I see your comment on there. So like, how do you get the reflective supervisor, right? You didn't ask me that question, but how do you get them to do more, right? I think that if you check out some of those resources too, you might explore how you might invite other types of conversation in those spaces, because there is some research that really does show what some of the key elements are in that process to make it the most useful for all folks involved. And I'll just leave that right there. Okay. And then what else? Susie, thank you. Yes, you know, I was so excited to see your face on here, and I'm so pumped that you are helping me with these links. Appreciate it. Susie got some of the links that I mentioned in the chat. There's some great resources. And like the webinars that are focused on equity on the Center for Excellence in Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation are really nice. Like you should totally check those out if you're interested. Other questions? I see that the results are looking like 78% say yes, it could be a racial equity intervention, and 22% saying maybe. So I'm willing and would like to pose a question to those who say maybe or no, if you were interested in sharing your thoughts about that. Or if anybody in general would like to share any thoughts about the topic or the question. Bueller. I'm dating myself. I definitely am happy to take other questions if folks have them. But if they don't, or maybe if they want to reach out to me offline, I don't know if I put my contact information, but I can put it in the chat right quick so folks can have it who might want to reach out or have a conversation with me outside of this. If you want to send me a private message too about your thoughts about the topic or your response, I would love to hear it. That's my email.
Well, Dr. Parker, we have 2 minutes until the next breakout session starts. So I just want to say thank you so much. That was a superior training. I really think that we can all benefit from these conversations and hope that we are all thinking about ways that we can talk about race and racial equity in our reflective supervision conversations. And thank you for sharing your contact information. This session will be recorded, so you guys will have access to it an hour after we're done here. And if you have anything else, of course, you can reach out to me or Dr. Parker. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.